This is the first time we've gotten started on time ever. This is great. High five for that, right? This is good. Okay, so tonight, the truth about gut health. This is, just first of all, take a look around. Like this, on a Wednesday night, you being here, this right now tells me that you guys are invested in you, invested in your health, because there's a lot of other places you could be doing other things, right? You guys all have families. So number one, I want to thank you for investing in you. At the end of this hour, I promise you, there's going to be a paradigm shift of how you understand your gut and how your gut impacts your overall health. Amen? Amen. Okay, here's why we do this. At the end of the day, my wife and I, the reason why we hold workshops in our clinic is one reason. We want you living longer, healthier, more abundant lives, walking in the purpose God gave you. Amen. That's what it comes down to. And what I realize is that through my own family is that what we all understand, right, is that I know the cliche thing, right, their greatest wealth is your health, right? And I think a lot of times we don't understand that until we lose our health or someone we know loses our health. Then that becomes abundantly clear, right? So the idea is this, is that we want to learn how to proactively take such good care of our bodies in alignment with how God made you so that we can walk in that purpose. And I think when you have your health, you are free to do and be all that God called you to be. When we lose our health, that's when that gets taken away. So this is why we take a very big deal on making sure that you understand all these areas of your health. You guys good? Okay, so we're going to start this off a little different. I have a guest here that you're going to hear from, and this is Allie. So everyone give it for Allie. So Allie here, I won't steal her thunder, but Allie here was the very first patient my wife and I ever had walk in our doors when we opened the office 4.5 years ago. And when you hear her story, as our first patient, I asked my wife, I said, why couldn't she just have headaches? Like, why does it have to be so bad? But you look at, I want you guys to hear what her testimony of where she was, and through her taking such action in her health, where God's led her today. It's pretty fantastic.
Do I hold this or do
you
I clip it?
just hold it.
Can I clip it?
Yeah, totally.
Hi guys, I'm Allie. Hi. I'm super excited to share my story with you tonight. I'll just start from the beginning. When I was 18 years old, I went from being super healthy, very active senior in high school to very sick overnight. And as anyone would, I went to the doctor and they didn't know what was wrong. And after 4 months of testing and test after test, they finally diagnosed me with sudden severe ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune disease that affects the lining of the colon. So essentially, I have ulcers throughout the entirety of my colon. And the doctor looked at me and he said, you know what, it's severe, but here are some steroids, take these for 10 days, you'll be fine. And so I did, because you trust your doctors, you know? And so I took them for 10 days and I got sicker and sicker. And after about day 7, my grandma, who was an ICU nurse, she came and saw me and she took one look at me and she was like, you are not okay. We're taking you to the ER right now. So we went to the ER and they immediately admitted me, and this started a vicious cycle of hospital stay after hospital stay, medication after medication. I had 26 blood transfusions, over 100 iron infusions. I lost my hair and was in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk because I could not carry the weight of my own body because I was so weak. And after years and years and years of this, my doctors kind of finally just threw up their hands and they were like, we don't know what to do with you. We don't know why you're so sick. And so they admitted me to the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, and I was there for 6.5 weeks, and they started to run more tests, and they found out that I had one medication left to try. And they said, well, we'll do this one, but if it doesn't work, your only option is surgery to remove your entire colon. And I was 21 at the time, and I was not down for that. I didn't know how you go from being super healthy 18-year-old to removing your colon at 21. Like, it just didn't make sense. And so I said, okay, let's try this last medication and see what happens. So they started administering the medication through IV, And within a minute, I was in full anaphylactic shock, and they couldn't get the reaction to stop. I was reacting for 11 minutes. And after that, they got the reaction to stop, and the doctor looked at me and he said, you know what this means, right? Like, we need to go take your colon out. We can do that tomorrow. And I looked at him and I was just like, I need to go home and pray about this. Like, I can't make that decision right now. I need to go home. And he said, you realize that if I let you go home, you will die. And I just said, you know what? One, my God's bigger than that. Two, I refuse to make decisions out of fear. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to choose that. He made me sign this cute little waiver that said he's not liable for my death. And I went home. And I really just started praying. I was like, what options do I have? Like, I researched everywhere, and I wrote down my entire story, and I started emailing it to every doctor I could think of, every famous doctor, Instagram doctor, you name it, I probably emailed them. And I just prayed that someone would reply and give me an option that I hadn't tried yet. So after a couple of weeks, I got one reply, and this doctor said, have you seen a chiropractor? And I kind of just sat there for a second. I was like, you're gonna read my entire story and you're gonna tell me to go see a chiropractor. But then the other part of me was like, no, I haven't. Like, I haven't been to a chiropractor. So I emailed him back and I was like, okay, I'm interested. Do you know any clinics in my area? He said, actually, there's one opening up on Monday. Here's their information. So I emailed them just like I emailed every other doctor, my whole story, and I just said, can you help me? And I got an email reply back, and Alana said, can I call you? So I said, yes. I jumped on the phone with her, and the first thing she said was, I just need to hear your voice because I need to know that you're a real person. Like, is this really your story? And I was like, yes, can you help me? Like, shoot me straight, because like, I'm not about to come waste my time. And she was like, come in on Monday and let's chat. So I came in, and they both sat down with me, and it was the first time in 5 years at this point that I had been sick that they spoke life over the situation. And they were like, you know what? We don't know. Like, we're gonna be honest with you. We don't know, but we believe that this will help, and we're gonna give it our best try. So they set me up with this whole plan. I was in here 3 days a week for adjustments. We adjusted my entire diet, removed toxins from my house and my cleaning supplies, things like that. And after 4 months of doing this, I was off all medication. I was no longer in a wheelchair. And after 6 months, I started working. And then after a year, I moved across the country alone to a place I'd never been. And God sustained me. And it was a crazy moment of just trust, and then knowing that God's given our bodies the ability to heal themselves. And we just need to tell it that. And that's what these guys are really good at doing. So that's my story. Here. There you go.
Okay. So now we can all go home, so I can't top that. So the reason why I have Allie tell her story, number one, is to give you hope, because I can tell you a lot of people, either you're sitting here tonight with something that's going on that you're like, this is never going to get better, it's never gotten better. You know somebody who's in that place, and I want you to hear that, because that's as dark as it probably gets, right? As a 20-year-old person, and I want you to know that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. There's always a way out, but we have to trust your body, right? So here's the idea. This is going to be our mantra for tonight. I'm going to say this a lot tonight. So what we're going to say is, when I say your body needs no help, it just needs no, you guys say? Interference. We're going to say that a lot. You guys, that's good, actually. So here's the idea. Your body needs no help. It just needs no interference. This is a concept that in chiropractic we believe that God's given you the ability to heal. All of us. Right now, if you cut your hand, guess what? That cut heals. If that can heal, anything else in your body can heal. The problem is that we get in the way and we mess it up too many times. We add too many toxins, we add all the garbage. It's like the person sitting there saying, God, I wish I could lose weight, as they eat French fries. Do you guys know what I'm saying? So it's like we have to stop getting in the way and allow our body the opportunity to heal. And the one thing that I've noticed in the years working with patients is that when you put the body in an ideal healing environment, you start seeing miracles happen, right? So the idea is this: we got to stop getting in the way. And tonight, when it comes to our gut, there's a lot of things that we do that we get in the way, that we mess it up, okay? So I'm going to start off with, what are some of the things that do that? So, and I'm going to come back to all these things later. We're just going to highlight them real fast. So some of the things that does that is sugar. We do a lot of that in our country here. Seed oils. This is a lot more common right now, but seed oils are in everything processed. Grains, stress, toxins, antibiotics, and the one thing that got everybody shaken up this week was vegetables. Vegetables might not be as good as you thought they were. And what's funny is when I put this up, all the moms or women were like, that can't be true. And all the dads are like, finally, no more vegetables. And I'm going to walk you through my thoughts. So we're going to wait because I'm going to get there. I'm going to walk you through my thoughts. So here's what's really cool. 2,500 years ago, before Jesus was walking the earth, Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. That was a bold statement a long time ago, and what we found today is that this is mostly true. There are many, many conditions that arise and begin and are tied to the gut. How many of you guys have heard the saying that your gut is like your second brain? Right? You've heard that before. There's so many millions of connections that go from the brain to the gut and the gut back to the brain, and they're so interconnected that, think about this for a second, that if my mind has a direct connection to my gut, there is also a direct connection from my gut to my mind. So if I have a toxic gut, do you think that could affect my brain? Yes. Big time. In fact, this is what's crazy that I learned this time around, that the connections from mind to gut, there's about 10% of the signals that go from your brain to your gut, 90% go from gut to brain. There is a greater connection of information going from your gut talking to your brain. So if your gut is unhealthy, that can lead to a whole host of other things. And when you tie it to the gut specifically, we start seeing most people, they connect gut problems with, we'll say, typical symptoms like bloating and constipation and diarrhea, right? That kind of thing. But here's what's wild, is that when you start to dive in deeper, autoimmune conditions tied to the gut, brain disorders or cognitive decline tied to the gut, cancer, fatigue, mood disorders, learning disabilities, infertility, asthma, allergies, all these things tied to the gut. But most times when you're not taught this, you start having one of these symptoms come up, no one's taught you to go back and check your gut. Does that make sense? Everyone else says, in our culture, this is what we do. We see all these things and we go, oh, don't worry, I have a pill for that. And then this is how our country is loaded, right? And this is what's led us to this, generation sick. In our culture, we don't look for a root cause, we quickly try to drug it. And this is the problem. And this is where we've gotten to right now. So today, the reason why they call this actually generation sick is that the generation of children today, for the first time in history, our kids are not expected to outlive us. When I saw that and I first heard that, that was a dagger, especially since I have little kids, right? So it hit me real hard to think about. And when you start to think about the reason why this is this is the first time in history that kids are developing adult chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes and things like that. That was never seen before in children, and now it's very common. You look at the amount of medication kids are on today, the amount of ADH pills they're on, the amount of obesity. You know that, and I talked about this at our last seminar, but now they're doing weight loss surgery for children. Like stomach staples and weight loss surgery for children. Like this is what's happening. Instead of helping us change our lifestyle, we've gone that far down the rabbit hole of now getting kids on so many medications that now, this is why you see so many kids, they're on so many psychedelic drugs that they don't know who they are or where they are. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? So this is why we have to make a difference. And this is why, I'll tell you this is going to be, like, it starts with everybody here in this room. Because 9 times out of 10, what they're eating comes from what we're giving them, right? So what we choose to do trickles down to what they get. So it has to start with us. It has to. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Okay, so that being said, I'm gonna start all the way from the beginning. So where does gut health begin? Literally begins on day 1. And there's a ton of things on literally the first day a baby is born. This is where it starts. So when you start to look at this, all these things up here make a difference on your gut health. So I'm gonna walk through these. So whether you have a natural birth or a C-section birth, that makes a big difference in your gut microbiome as a baby. So here's what happens. If you have a vaginal birth, your baby basically gets a lot of the bacteria in the vaginal canal, and that's what starts their microbiome. The majority of that is kind of like, they call it a lactobacillus, right? The most common. Side note, but when a baby is born through a C-section, they don't get that. They typically first come in contact with the skin, which is a staph lococcus. So here's the idea, is that when a baby is born C-section, they already are missing the building blocks of their microbiome, but that doesn't get taught. So when that happens, we are not taught that we have to start building their gut microbiome much faster, right? So there's step 1. Step 2, breastfed babies versus formula-fed babies. There's a reason why God has us breastfeed, right? There's a reason why breast milk is so rich in proteins and colostrum and nutrients to feed and build the building blocks of your gut, versus them getting soy and processed GMO formula that's going into their gut. Do you see how right away that can make a very big difference on the microbiome building of a baby? So that piece right there, huge. Then we go into skin time versus incubator. I found a research article that blew me away that showed that babies, when they're first born, need to be directly put onto mom, skin to skin, as fast as possible. And what's happening now in hospitals is that babies are being born, taken away and put into an incubator to put into a light because they think that they need that for like jaundice and different things, versus being put directly onto mom. And what they find is, they looked at in the study, babies that were directly put on mom's skin time versus babies put in an incubator, very different, distinct microbiomes. Very distinct, a much more diverse microbiome, skin to skin with mom. That's a big deal. Then we go into vaccines. This should be an obvious one, but there is a very big gut disturbance when you start loading heavy metals in on day 1. There's a large connection of gut malfunction when you start injecting things like that directly in on day 1. So that's a whole nother conversation that we can have, but there's, here's what I'll tell you. The amount of vaccines that we give our children today versus what they had when we were all children, do you guys know the difference? When we were kids, from 0 to 18, it was like 14 vaccines. Today, it's 79. Very big difference. So can you see how that heavy load makes a very big difference on the health of their gut? Okay, so that right there. And the last one is antibiotics. And I'm going to save this because I'm going to go deeper on antibiotics, but antibiotics are given to our kids like Skittles these days. And it's really unfortunate, but that right there will completely wreck and destroy their microbiome. And this right here, this is literally within the first couple months of life with babies. So do you see how it's very, very important to make sure that from the beginning, we start our kids off right. From the beginning, we're educating ourselves of how do we start our kids off with a healthy gut to build the proper immune system. So what does this whole digestive thing look like? So a lot of times when I say your gut, microbiome, all these different terms, here's what I need you to know about the digestive system. The 3 main important things that you want to think about with the digestive system. Number 1 is digesting it. So can you break it down, right? That's step 1. Number 2 is absorption. Can you absorb it in? And this is a huge one because a lot of people I know spend a lot of good money on expensive supplements, but you have a damaged gut and your body cannot absorb it. If you cannot absorb the nutrients, then you basically just have expensive pee and it's going right out. You have to be able to absorb and utilize the nutrients you're taking in, okay? And the last one is you gotta eliminate it. A lot of us have problems eliminating things, and this is where you'll see people get very bloated or gassy because things will sit, ferment. Some of you guys who are patients, you may have seen x-rays where there's a lot of black inside the x-ray around the digestive area. That black that you see, that's a buildup of poop, basically, that's fermenting in your gut because things aren't moving. So those three things are really important, making sure that A, you can break it down, B, you can absorb it, and then lastly, you can efficiently get it out like you're supposed to. One thing I'm going to add is, and this is, I'm going to come back to this with vegetables, but if you ever want to check the elimination time, one old school way to do this is eat corn and then look in the toilet and see when it comes out. You guys have always been there where you see corn comes out in your poop, it doesn't break down, right? So you look and see how soon does it come out. If it comes out like that night, that's a problem. You should not be eliminating food that fast. That means nothing's getting absorbed. If it's coming out a week later, that's a problem. It should not be sitting in your gut that long, okay? It should be a day or two, and then you should see it come out. Make sense? But keep that in mind, the fact that it doesn't break down, and you could see it, there's a problem with that. Probably shouldn't be eating that, okay? All right, so microbiome. What is the microbiome? This is what's wild. Your microbiome, we are made of trillions of cells. That's how our body's created. We are made of like hundreds of trillions of bacteria and viruses that make up our microbiome and make up our body. We are mostly viruses and bacteria than we are cells. Like, think about that for a second, okay? So here's the thing. We want to create, there is like a whole ecosystem of viruses and bacteria that we want to keep in balance, and this is what keeps our body healthy. So to try to eliminate all the bacteria and viruses is not smart. There has to be a balance in our body that keeps us healthy. So in this microbiome, you're trying to create as harmonious of an environment that you can so that everything can work properly, because I'm going to get into it here in a sec, but in your microbiome, this is where so much is stored and produced and housed, okay? So getting here. Now, how do we disrupt the microbiome? So this is what's wild. So antibiotic, let's break this word down. Anti meaning against, biotic means life. This is an against life pill. So this is what blew me away. This is back in 2010, okay? And I still use this study because between 2010 to today, do you think we've prescribed less or more medications? More. So just think that whatever I'm going to tell you, it's now more. Okay, so in 2010, 258 million antibiotic prescriptions were given out. In 2010, the US population was only 309 million. 90% of our population was given an antibiotic in 2010. And that is more today. That is unreal. 4 out of 5 kids are given an antibiotic every single year. By the time a kid hits age 10, they've already been given 7 to 8 rounds of antibiotic, if not more. That's on the low end. And this happens because anytime we get sick, we get a little ear infection, we get anything, that's the first thing that we give. And here's what's frustrating is that when you look at a kid, even for an ear infection, most ear infections are actually viral. Actually a virus. So when you give an antibiotic to a virus, do you see how that really wouldn't work? And this is what's frustrating is that they're not really being tested. Think about the last time you were given an antibiotic. How many of you guys were tested to see if it was actually a bacterial infection or a virus? Not one hand. This is the problem, right? That should be known. And when you take an antibiotic, here's why this is so bad. So think about this. Imagine all the viruses and bacteria in your gut. What an antibiotic does is it goes in, and it's basically like dropping an atomic bomb inside your gut, and it like wipes everybody out. It's like the nuclear weapon of like bacteria, okay? So once you take an antibiotic and you're on this course of them, it wipes everything out. And if you've been on them, most people notice that after they take them, they typically get sick pretty soon after. And I'm gonna get to that in a minute, why. But when you look at this, like, you are wiping all of them out versus trying to eliminate the bad guys. Eliminating the stuff that doesn't belong in there. We are wiping everything out. So what I tell people is this. I understand that, yes, I'm the last person ever, if you know me, to think that you should be on one of these. But I understand that there are times when that is needed, right? When that happens, this is when there has to be a rebuilding of your gut. There has to be a repopulating of your gut. So we always tell patients that if that happens, tell us and we will guide you in how to rebuild your bacterial microbiome afterwards so that we can be in a good space. Make sense? So at all costs, avoid getting on this. Avoid letting your kids get on this. Come talk to us if they're wanting to put them on, and we'll guide you in other ways to go about it, okay? And this is why we don't do it. So we talked about why do you get sick right after. 70% of your immune system is housed and resides in your gut. 70%. Why? Here's what's crazy. Why do you think in the, we'll call it the holiday season, why do we also call that sick and flu season? There's a lot of factors there, but there's not like a little virus that just wakes up and attacks everybody in the holidays. It's that we are eating so much sugar and garbage, and we are damaging our gut so much more that we suppress your immune system. They did a study and they showed that when you eat sugar, okay, when you eat sugar, your immune response gets suppressed for up to 8 hours. 8 hours. That's like taking your defense wall and dropping it, letting everybody come take a shot at you for 8 hours. This is why, and this is what's crazy, is when kids are sick. I know, like this, I think back to my childhood when I was sick. I remember my mom would be like, "Oh my God, you're sick and you have a sore throat. Let's go get ice cream." And I'd be like, "Yay!" Right? You guys all been there? You get sick and you go to the doctor and they give you a lollipop. You're like, "No, don't feed it sugar if you're sick. You're making it significantly worse." So this is why we have to be aware. This is why I tell people, when you're sick, like all hands on deck, making sure that we're being very careful of what you're putting in your mouth, because you want to make sure that your gut is healthier and more stable during this period. We don't want to damage and suppress your immune system more. Do you guys see that? So just think, if you're getting sick constantly, if I hear that, what I'll typically ask you is, have you changed your diet recently? Is anything new going in? Are you eating? Because most times if we're under a stressed situation in life, right, we're in a stress period, work is really crazy, we typically stop cooking at home and we just grabbing whatever's fast and out there, and your diet will go like this, and then all of a sudden we get sick. There's typically a correlation of us eating worse and our immune system tanking. So we gotta be aware of what we're putting in our mouth. Then, there's a connection between your mood and your gut. So this is another big one when it comes to your emotions, how happy you feel, and your digestive system. So how many of you guys have heard the word serotonin? Okay, so what serotonin is, it's a hormone in your body that allows you to feel happy and love and joy. It's like, this is what makes us get excited about things, okay? Up to 95% of the serotonin is housed and created in your gut. So you think about this. This is what typically happens. You feel depressed and you feel sad. So we go to our doctor and they say, "What's wrong?" You're like, "Man, I'm just feeling down. Life's been hard." He goes, "I got something for you." And we take a pill. And it's an antidepressant, an anti-anxiety medication. If I give you an anti-anxiety medication to chemically raise your serotonin, and your body needs more serotonin, but we just chemically give it to it, and we do that for a prolonged period of time, do you think your body is going to continue making adequate levels of serotonin? This is one of the reasons why a mood-altering drug, a anxiety or depression drug, are very difficult to come off. Because when you are on them for prolonged periods of time, your body stops regulating and understanding how to produce serotonin, and this is why it's not impossible, we've helped people do this, but it's very difficult the longer you're on them. So I tell people, number one, if this is what's happening, number one, let's go to the source of where it's created and stored, and let's start making sure that we get that healthy first. Doesn't that make sense? And like, here's I have a uncle who is like very big into like growing trees. Like he had a bunch of like trees, like fruit trees. And if a tree started producing bad fruit and the fruit was like all rotten, every fruit came off all bad, would you just say, oh man, there's a fruit problem? Or would you go back to the roots and look to see where is something being damaged in the soil? Does that make sense? We got to stop looking at the symptom and start looking at the root and figure out, how do I fix the root of the problem? And this is what makes more sense. So when we get into this guy, we have to go back and understand this. So I'm going to throw out some numbers for you. And this is more recently. 1 out of 10 people are now in our country right here. 1 out of 10 people are now on a psychiatric drug. Women in their 40s and 50s. 1 out of 4 take an antidepressant in the US. 30 million Americans were prescribed $12 billion worth of antidepressants in 2020. Just sink on that for a second.
Now I know why they drive that way.
This is it. No. And I'm gonna show you something. This is how profound the gut is on the mood. In Canada, they did this study with mice, okay? And what they did was they had 2 groups of mice. And one group of mice exhibited behaviors of like happiness and joy and excitement. They were outgoing. And this group of mice were more shy and reserved and like sad, okay? And what they did was essentially did like a poop transplant, and they took the bacteria from their microbiome, extracted it, and re-put it in the mice, okay? So they took the poop from this mice and put it in this mice and vice versa. And after a couple of days, guess what happened? Their personalities switched. This group of mice became excited and joyful and happy, and this group of mice became sad and reserved and quiet. The gut, your overall bacterial gut, has a profound impact on your emotions and your overall, how you're perceiving your environment around you. This is huge. So this is why we have to make sure our gut is in a healthy place, okay? Now, we're gonna go into something called leaky gut. Who's heard of leaky gut? Okay, oh man, this is gonna be good. So I'm gonna try to do it this way. Okay, man. Make sure everybody can see this. So in your gut, all along your digestive tract, there's a lining, okay? There's a lining that goes and coats, that's like your cell wall, okay? Your cell wall is gonna look like this. So these right here are gonna be all the cells. These are all individual cells that make up the wall of your lining in your digestive tract, okay? Now this is like the barrier, and you want this strong because we'll say up here, this is where the bloodstream is. You want to keep this clean and pure. Down here, this is where your gut is. Now in your gut, this is where you're gonna see things like proteins are gonna be in there. You're gonna get a lot of wastes, and you're gonna get a lot of toxins. So think about in your gut, all the things that we're eating and digesting is filtering through our gut, right? This is what leaky gut is where there's a damage now to that cell wall. So what happens is that we have prolonged inflammation in that area, and you've damaged that wall. So what ends up happening is that this starts to break away, and you now have a gap in your wall. So what a leaky gut means is that all the toxins and the waste are now able to travel up into the bloodstream where they don't belong, and this is how we get really, really sick. So we talk about a lot of autoimmune conditions stem from a leaky gut where things are traveling up into the bloodstream where they don't belong, getting us sick, keeping us sick. And the reason why, if you have a leaky gut, this needs to get taken care of. In fact, did I draw my picture? Yes. Where's my fence? So here's why this is a big deal, is that if you have a leaky gut, now just think about this concept of anything you put in your body, like a probiotic, is going in and going out. All of the supplements you take, going in and going out. Does it make sense? Like nothing is staying where it belongs and metabolizing where it belongs when you have a destructive barrier that's allowing things to filter where it doesn't belong. So a leaky gut, this is where you have to repair the lining of your gut. And we're going to talk about how to do that in a little bit. Well, that's a great question. I'm going to get there. Just kidding. I would say this, when your most digestive issues, when you start to look at them, because here's the thing, in digestion, you're gonna see a whole host of very similar symptoms. Most times, you're gonna have, there's not like you have one thing, most times people have a multitude, and this is we'll say the start point of a lot of it. So you have to I would say, you have to rebuild and fix the gut here, and then work on the rest of this over here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how to do that. But most times I would say if you have a gut issue, most times there is some form of leaky gut in there at some point. So a couple things that will damage and create leaky gut. So processed sugar, this is one thing, because processed sugar goes in the body and essentially is direct inflammation. It's like throwing gas on the fire. You want the quickest way to create inflammation in your gut lining, just keep eating processed sugar. That is the fastest thing you can do. Damaged fats, I put seed oils here. We go back to seed oils we talked about earlier. This is like the sunflower oil, safflower oil, canola oil, vegetable oil. You guys please know that vegetable oil, because it says vegetable, is not a good thing for you, right? You start looking, and when you look at a lot of food, this is the kicker, is that if I told you to just take those two things out of your diet, be very mindful, eliminate processed sugar and processed seed oils. If you just did those two things, I promise you, you would see a massive difference in just those two things, because those two things are the most overconsumed things in our diet. And where you'll find processed seed oils is typically going to be in boxed foods and packaged foods. Okay, so look at the ingredients, and if you see those seed oils in there, it's an automatic let go. Refined carbohydrates, all the pastas and the grains that we're eating, that is, we'll say, processed really bad in our country. You guys have all heard this, when you eat pasta here and you eat pasta in Italy, not the same pasta, right? This is why we don't make it good here. We over-process it so bad here. We bleach it. It's so bad. Glyphosate. Who's heard of glyphosate? Okay, glyphosate is, if you haven't heard of glyphosate, you've probably heard of, as the other name, it's called Roundup, weed killer. So what they spray, glyphosate, basically gets sprayed on all the plants and all the things, all the oats, and this is how they kill off all the bugs. And essentially it's like spraying a Roundup weed killer on all of our food. This is something that is, for whatever reason, allowed in our country, but it's illegal and banned in most countries in Europe. This is wild to me, but glyphosate is a huge disruptor of your food. And there are some packaging foods that will specifically say glyphosate free, because they know, hey, this is like oatmeal. I'll just say oats are a typical one that's sprayed heavily with glyphosate. There's a brand of oatmeal, I believe it's called Farmers We Know, I think it's what it's called. And on that package, if you look in big green letters, it says glyphosate free, because it's one of the few ones that are known to not put that in there. So it's really good. Last one's artificial sweeteners. Oh, this is a big one. Artificial sweeteners, this is going to be like all of your sucraloses. Look at your protein powders, look at a lot of your drinks, your sports drinks. You're going to see sucralose in here. It's basically, sucralose is basically Splenda, which is horrific for your body. And well, yeah, don't ever eat it again after tonight. And then another one's aspartame. Aspartame is another one that is a significant go in there and start damaging the gut barrier. So make sure we're avoiding artificial sweeteners. Now we're going to move to SIBO. Who's heard of SIBO? Okay, SIBO. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Basically what SIBO is in your bacteria, you have a large colon, you got a small colon. or large intestine, small intestine. SIBO is where you start getting fibrous roots ingraining themselves in the small intestine when they don't belong there. Now, the most common side effect that you'll see from SIBO is people who say, man, every time I eat vegetables, I get so bloated and I get so gassy. I'm always bloated. I always feel so full. And this is where I'm gonna start trickling in some of the vegetable thing with you guys, is there's a couple different ways to treat SIBO if you have it. The most common way, you go to the doctor, is they put you on antibiotics, which is great because now you're gonna kill everything, okay? The second thing is they'll put you on a really specific, stringent diets called like the FODMAP diet and stuff like that. You might have heard of that. Here's what's really crazy. I've talked to people who've had SIBO and I've told them, try something for me. Just stop eating vegetables for a period of time and all of their bloating goes away. You stop eating vegetables for a period of time and what you do is you essentially starve out those fibrous rooted fibers inside the small intestine and eventually they die off and SIBO begins to heal. If vegetable fibers, it's what's rooted in SIBO, the solution would be then to stop putting that in there. Does that make sense? If that's what's creating it, then to fix it, stop doing that. And I think this is where I would say most people I would say start there if you have SIBO or if you know somebody who has SIBO. I would say start there. We talked about symptoms, bloating and gas. So when we go into this healing process now, here's where I need you to know that there's a specific process to healing the gut. And a lot of times, this is what it's like. You got a big nasty pool inside your gut. Now, if this was your swimming pool, okay? Let's say winter time, we all stop taking care of a pool because no one's going in it and it gets all nasty, right? If this was your pool and I told you, hey, go home and just like throw some chlorine tablets in there and it should be fine, would you believe me? No, you say you're an idiot. That's dumb. So this is when it's like this, what do you have to do?
Clean.
Drain it. Get all that gunk out of there. Clean it out. Then you got to repair and clean out the surrounding area of the pool, and then you put new fresh water in. Make sense? Your gut is the very same way. Your gut, if it's an unhealthy gut microbiome, you have to start off by removing all the bad stuff, repair the lining of the inside, and then repopulate with good stuff. 3R process. Okay? Remove, repair, repopulate. Because what happens most times is that people will just sit there and they go, oh my gosh, I have a tummy issue. Let me just take a probiotic pill that I got at Walmart. That's like putting a chlorine tablet inside the pool. Do you guys see? There has to be a process to clean out your gut. So when you go through this, here's what I go back to, the remove. All the things we talked about in the beginning. These are the things that you need to remove from your diet to start allowing this a chance to heal. These are the things that inflame the digestive tract and the gut, so we need to remove those things away from the gut to allow it to heal. I can't put a fire out if every other minute I'm throwing gasoline back on the fire. Does that make sense? We have to make sure we're removing these bad guys out. So the seed oils, the sugars, the grains. I'm going to really quickly hit on stress because I don't have it in here later. When I say remove stress, there's a guy, a patient of mine, he just had his baby like 2 days ago. And him and his wife are obviously in a little bit of a stress state because they're about to have their third kid. And he's like, Dr. Mike, my gut's all messed up. I'm so irregular. What should I take? And I said, why do you think it's messed up? And he's like, I'm just been so stressed. I go, you don't need to take something. Don't buy something. We need to regulate the stress, because when you are stressed, your body goes into this high cortisol state. If I am in a stress state and I'm like running for my life, my body is not going to focus on digestion. It's going to focus on survival of getting away. Does that make sense? So when you're in a stressed, sympathetic state, you are not going to digest. If you want to be in a digestive state, we have to get stress down as best we can and put ourselves in what we call a parasympathetic dominant state. That's like the old adage, rest and digest and fight or flight, right? You've heard of those. So we want to get ourselves in the rest and digest phase so that way we can allow ourselves to be able to process and relax. So I talked to him about this. I was like, hey, do me a favor. You can't control the fact you get a baby coming in a couple days, but just get up, stop looking at your phone, start praying again, meditate, go for a walk, do some of this stuff, and like within a couple days, he was back to his cycle, right? You gotta look at stress as a big factor. Okay, yes! Who's excited for this slide? Okay, when I was a kid, I swear, this here lived in my house. Like always, I feel like there's a never-ending supply of Pepto-Bismol. And when you have a stomach ache, we've all seen the commercials. A lot of you guys might have this in your house now, so your homework is to go home and throw it away. But here's what happens, Pepto-Bismol. When I was a kid and I had a stomach issue, my dad was like, hey, you know what to do. And that meant grab the bottle, because you know the little cap that you're supposed to pour it into? Yeah, we threw that away when we got it. So that meant grab the Pepto-Bismol and drink it until I thought I was good. That was my directions from my pharmacist dad. And this is so bad. Here's why this is bad. In our office, we started doing gut testing to see and check people's microbiome, okay? We were doing metabolic testing on people's guts, and it checks the toxicity and it checks how well you're absorbing and breaking down foods. And what I started seeing a lot of is a heavy metal toxicity called bismuth. Bismuth is a heavy metal toxin. Can you guys guess where bismuth toxin comes from? Pepto-Bismol. And what we're finding is that we were treating the gut issue with a heavy metal drink, that we're creating another problem. This is what modern medicine does, is that we take a solution that we think, but we're creating a whole other problem. Remember, the body needs no help, it just needs no... Okay, one got it, it's good. No, but here's what we think about. We can't keep putting this in. You're gonna create another bigger problem. Ibuprofen. I don't need to ask you to put your hands up, but when you think of ibuprofen, I remember when I was in high school and I played football, like Costco makes a pretty awesome sized bottle of ibuprofen. That lived in my gym bag. And that's how I made it to every game. And have any of you guys taken time to sit back and turn the bottle over to read the warning label on this thing? I'm going to show you. You can see. This is the label on an ibuprofen bottle. And in big letters under the warning sign, it says stomach bleeding. This is the most common symptom of overuse of ibuprofen, is stomach ulcers. When you chronically take ibuprofen, you are shredding the lining of your gut. Allie talked about having stomach ulcers in the beginning. That's what you are creating in your gut when you overuse ibuprofen. It'd be nice if someone told you that before you bought the bottle, huh? This is what's so frustrating. And this is why when I talk about, people go, Dr. Mike, you just like hate all pills. It's because these pills are creating other problems in your body that we're not seeing. And I had a patient one time come in and literally was having like so much stomach bleeding. And I asked him, I said, are you taking ibuprofen? He goes, every day. And we had to get him off this, because think about this. If you are taking ibuprofen, does it matter that there is nothing I can do? There's no magical adjustment. There's no magical food that you can eat to make that stop if you're continuing to do that every single day. Do you see that? You have to stop that overconsumption of that first. So this has to stop if you want to get a healthy gut. Next, repair phase. How do you start repairing that lining of your gut? So we're going to go through all these, but bone broth, collagen, protein, there's some supplements that help. We're going to talk about fasting, getting chiropractic care, really cool study, and then hydrating your body. So when you start looking at this, fasting, there's some phenomenal research on how fasting impacts the microbiome and the lining repair of your gut. So think about this, from just the most standardized thing, if putting all that garbage in all the time is what's breaking it down, the simple fact of you just stop putting things in is going to give it a chance to rest. Does that make sense? Whether you choose to do intermittent fasting, which we're going to talk about different forms, but just the fact of eating less often gives your stomach a chance to rest. So when you look at intermittent fasting, here's some cool facts that we looked up. So They did this is all in the study. They showed that 13 hours to 16 hours of a fasted window, in that they saw increase in weight loss. There was a 1,300% increase in testosterone. If anything, you should be fasting for that, men. There is a decrease in something called CRP inflammatory marker. So it's an inflammation marker you'll see in a blood test. That went down when people were just doing intermittent fasting from 13 to 16 hours in that little range there. Then you move into something, if you go into 17 hours, at the 17-hour mark, they started seeing something called autophagy. Autophagy is basically like the cleansing of all the old age cells in your body. It's like sweeping all those things out and getting them out and being ready for new healthy cells. Because your body's doing that. It's cleaning out old cells, making room for new cells. Autophagy is you cleaning all the bad guys out and making room for new ones. And then at the 24-hour mark, if you fast for 24 hours, what they find, something awesome, is that they saw intestinal stem cell production. You actually started to create new stem cells in your microbiome at the 24-hour mark of fasting. That's pretty freaking cool, just to know that. So here's where the inner gut lining that we talked about, that lining of your thing, if you want to start repairing and building new, stronger cells, I recommend adding in a 24-hour fast every so often. And it was funny, I was talking to a friend of mine. He's like, man, a lot of this is like, sounds expensive. I was like, just don't eat. That's pretty cheap. Like, start doing more 24-hour fasts. That's probably as cheap as it gets. But adding this in every so often has been helpful. So for the past month, I've done a 24-hour fast once a week. And I pick a day. And I'll tell you guys, just a quick thing, is that when I do that 24-hour fast, I intentionally pick the most busiest day I have for a couple of reasons. One reason, I'm not sitting at home staring at the refrigerator, right, looking about food. That's step one. But two, I can tell you that on those days when I feel like I typically need an outside source to help me get through the day, in that fasted state, I rely on something bigger. Does that make sense? You go back to something much stronger to fuel me, and I don't need this, and it makes me be so much more sharp. If you've ever done a 24-hour fast, what you'll notice is that when you get towards the end, you start getting a whole lot more clear-headed, and you can think so much more clear because your body is now running on ketones, and it's like a significant better fuel source. Now again, I would say that if you're going to be like exercising hard, right, don't be fasting all the time. I did that on Tuesday and I thought I was going to pass out, but it was okay. I made it through. So fasting. Then we go into animal-based eating. When I looked up the best way to cure or help repair a leaky gut or a damaged gut, the number one thing that pops up is the carnivore diet. Okay? Here's how this works. I'm going to walk you through this. When you talk about the carnivore diet, there's different phases of it. So I call this animal-based eating, but if your goal, and I'm talking to specific people here, if you know that you have a disruptive gut, a leaky gut, a bad microbiome that needs to be healed, if you know that you have an autoimmune condition of some sort, this is where I would say I would recommend doing a strict carnivore for a period of time. Okay? What that means is that you're eating things like red meat, mostly red meat, salt, water, and sometimes they'll let you put in butter, but you're doing like bone marrow, you're doing bone broth, collagen, those kinds of things, okay? At some point, depending on how you go, you can add in like chicken and pork and stuff, but I want to read you guys this because this is pretty fascinating. Harvard did a study on this, okay? So it comes from Harvard. And they did this is extreme, but they had there was over 2,000 people in this study do a 6-month carnivore diet, okay? So 6 months long. In that diet, they were allowed to eat meat, eggs, fish, bone broth, salt, raw dairy, and organ meats, okay? That was their diet for 6 months. And this is gonna blow you away. In this study, what they found was chronic disease improved by 69%. Food and hunger cravings improved 91%. Strength improved 78%. Energy improved, 89%. Decreased insulin use, 90%. Resolved of skin issues, 92%. Discontinued insulin altogether for type 2 diabetes, 92%. Discontinued overall diabetes medications orally, 84%. Hypertension resolved, 93%. This is literally eating the carnivore diet for this long. Here's why I believe this starts to happen is that when you do this, think about you are cutting out all of the refined grains, all the processed sugar, all the processed seed oils. Does that make sense? Like you are eating straight from God's green earth of things that are whole. And this is what's interesting is when we talk about the vegetable thing, what I found diving into this carnivore animal-based eating is that my thought is this. Am I telling you that you should never eat a vegetable again? No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that when it comes to nutrition and what we're fueling our body with, anything that we eat or drink, the ultimate goal should be, what am I putting in my body that's going to give me the most nourishment? It's going to fuel and heal my cells of my body. That's going to help metabolize my body for energy and production, right? It's going to give me growth. Like that should be the goal of what's going in my body. Most of what we put in our body today is for emotional pleasure. Not a lot of thought into those things. Does that make sense? So when you start to make that the goal, what you find is that animal-based foods are more bioavailable and break down and absorb better in the body than a lot of vegetables do. A lot of people have a hard time with vegetables. Now, here's my caveat. If you eat a lot of vegetables and you have no gut problems and you feel fantastic, I'm not talking to you. You continue doing what you're doing because it's okay. Does that make sense? But if you're someone who's struggled and are struggling, I would recommend giving this a shot. And to give you an idea, so I get up at 5 a.m. and do CrossFit workouts. I come in here and adjust all of you guys most of the day, go home and wrestle a 3-year-old on my lunch break. Like I'm pretty much going most of the day. And I've done this now for the last 2 weeks strict. And I can tell you that my energy levels feel fine. I feel good. My skin feels clear. My head feels clear. Like I don't ever tell you guys to do something that I haven't done first. And you guys know that. So before I came out here and wanted to talk about it, I've been doing this now for 2 weeks. And I can tell you that I feel pretty darn great. I don't have any more of the bloating that I used to get. So the question is like, would I go back to eating vegetables? And the question is, I don't know, because I feel so good doing this. All my levels feel great. I don't know if I would go back. Does that make sense? So if it's fueling my body the best, then I'm going to keep it. Now, how does this now go into autoimmune conditions? This is a whole nother ballgame. So this is exciting. When you eat an animal-based diet, okay, here's what's fantastic. You increase the natural zinc in your body. And when you do that, you start to upregulate something called a T regulatory cell. Okay, if you're really like geeked out like me, go look this up. You increase the production of T regulatory cells. When you do that, your body will naturally start to suppress your immune response. An autoimmune condition is where your immune system is over-fighting something, right? It's overworking and it's fighting against you. T regulatory upregulation suppresses the immune system naturally and helps your body to now relax and stop fighting itself. And I've talked to some people who've had a lot of thyroid issues or psoriasis or eczema, and they've started to do this and they've seen a lot of this go away. It's pretty wild stuff what can happen when we apply this in, okay? Now, other things that we talk about. So bone broth is another really healing food. Bone broth is really strong in glutamine, which is going to be very healing for the gut lining. Bone broth also reduces inflammation in the gut lining. So when you're on this process, bone broth is okay to have. During the gut healing journey, bone broth is good for your body to have. There's a company that we partner with called Simply Healthy, and they're up the road, and the lady there, I know her personally, and she home makes all of the bone broth from scratch from grass-fed cows. Like it's the best. So if you're gonna get it, I highly recommend you go there because I know it's well made. And if you go there and you tell them you're from here, you guys get a 10% off anything you buy from them because we partner with them. So that's a pretty awesome thing. Also making sure the protein that you're eating and collagen that you're getting are good source protein and collagen. Again, a lot of people, this was also me when I was in college and I didn't know anything about nutrition. I would go work out in the gym all day long, and then I would go buy like muscle milk protein, right? You remember that? Like all these really terrible protein powders, and you feel so nasty in your gut because they're so processed and they have so much junk in it. If your protein powder is not grass-fed, if it does not come from a source that you can recognize, if there's multiple long ingredients, stop taking it. Sound good? Yeah. Make it really simple. The one that we have here, if you look at our ones that we have, if you've seen them before, we just got them rebranded, and we use a new company now that all the protein powder we have is from a regenerative farm, and it's all grass-fed, all grass-finished, and there's like 4 or 5 ingredients. Like it's like some of the best stuff you can find. It's really, really good. Nervous system. So we talked about this, that when you get adjusted and you're regulating your nervous system, I talked about this earlier with the parasympathetic and sympathetic, you can start to regulate your nervous system and calm the body back down when you're getting adjusted. I just had a kid the other day, the mom was like, yeah, I don't know how, but ever since they've been getting adjusted, their body, her digestive tract has like been so much better. Normal bowel movements. There was a guy who was coming here, like 1 bowel movement every 4 days. Started getting adjusted. I didn't even get a chance to change his nutrition, and he was getting a bowel movement once a day. Just by getting adjusted, you can start to rebalance the nervous system back over to parasympathetic and start calming down the nervous system, and this makes a really big difference in your gut communication. So I think that's a really good place to start. If you're not a patient here, if you've never had your spine checked, I think you got to start there. Make sure that you have a good connection from your brain out to your gut. A lot of what we did with Allie in the beginning, helping her with her body, was making sure that her brain can talk to her gut. If your brain can't talk to your gut through the nervous system, you got to start there. Does that make sense? Got to begin there. Now, what's next? Repopulate. This is where now we've repaired the lining of the wall. Now you got to put all the good stuff back in. Now you want to repopulate with good foods. So here's something that I learned recently was when you're looking at probiotic rich foods, the girls are going to love this. How many of you guys have heard of kefir? Love that. Okay, so there's yogurt and there's kefir, however you want to say it. How many of you guys know that those are vastly two very big different things? They're not the same. Okay? When I first was doing all this, I would go in the store, I just thought that was just like liquidy yogurt. I thought it was the same thing, if I'm being honest. When you start to understand the difference here, it's processed very differently. Okay, so yogurt, very good probiotic food. If you eat yogurt, what that's going to do is the bacteria you already have in your gut, it will feed them. Okay? It will feed the current bacteria that lives in your gut. Kefir actually has the ability to recolonize new bacteria in your gut. So think about if you've taken an antibiotic and you've wrecked a lot of your gut, adding something like kefir back in is phenomenal to repopulate your gut with new bacteria. If you're in your healing journey and we're basically wiping things out to start fresh, adding kefir in is a really good place to start to repopulate good bacteria, okay? Okay, the gut healing bundle. So we're here towards the end now. If you're looking at this and you're somebody who is, we'll say, struggling with gut dysfunction, and you want to go through this process of healing your gut, and you want to go through this process of saying, I need to clean out all the bad stuff, repair it, repopulate it. There's going to be a gut protocol we're gonna put out for you guys, and this gut bundle is going to be a piece of that, because these supplements, each one of these things, you're going to take them in very specific time frames, and each one of these supplements has a very specific role in each of those processes. So, for example, in the beginning, the Max GI, that right there, that beginning process helps to break down the bacterial cell wall of bad guys to allow you to get them out. So it basically breaks down, opens up the cell wall of bad ones so we can flush those guys out. We look at the digestive enzymes and the gut renew. these two things are going to help you rebuild the cell wall of a new barrier. And also on the carnivore diet, if you've not eaten that much meat, the digestive enzymes are going to help your body break down the meat and absorb them a lot easier so that your nutrients that you're getting in are digesting smoother, okay? And at the end, when we're repopulating, this is where the probiotic comes in to now repopulate with the good stuff. Now you want to put it in so that your body is set for that. Your digestive tract is ready for new live bacteria. So far, so good? Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, so here's, last thing. There's a kids probiotic. If you have a child that you want help with, we have a kids probiotic that our kids take. And the reason why I talk about this is that if you look at the one we have and you look at the ingredient labels, like there's very low ingredients and it's sweetened with monk fruit extract. This is what a lot of parents I've seen come up with. And I'm going to show you why this is bad. So if you look at Mary Ruth, first of all, when you see this, you typically look at that bottle and you're like, that's got to be healthy for you, right? Because it's got a little pilgrim lady, so she looks cool. It's got organic, it's vegan, it's got all these colors, it's really cool. So now here's what happens. When you look at the ingredients of this guy, the first ingredient is tapioca syrup. The second ingredient is cane sugar. Not a good start. And then if you look at the bottom, it's got sunflower oil. So sunflower oil is a seed oil. So right away, this doesn't make sense. It's not a good connection for something to be putting in your child. Does that make sense when you're looking at the ingredients of stuff? You want to make sure that what you're putting in is not counteracting their gut in the first place. So that's a big, big thing to watch out for. So here's the protocol we're going to do. This is what I've been doing the last 2 weeks because, again, I don't make you do something that I wouldn't do. So we're doing something called the 5-1-1 challenge. If you want to do this, after we get done here, go see the team in the front. What you'll do is you'll get your bundle. The bundles are 15% off tonight. And we're going to put you on a group where I'm going to make a specific video to walk through this in detail so that you know exactly how to do it. But the 5-1-1 challenge is this. 5-1-1 means 5 days of intermittent fasting, 1 day of a 24-hour fast, 1 day of no fast. 5-1-1, okay? 5 days intermittent, 1 day, 24 hours of fasting, 1 day, no fasting, eat all day. During that time frame, you're going to do an animal-based eating where you're going to eat in. Now, here's what I would say. If you're someone who has a gut-specific thing that you're like, I know I need to fix this, I would be a lot more strict on the carnivore and what you're doing there. And again, I can help walk you through this. If you're someone who's like, hey, I don't really have any gut issues or I don't really connect to any of these things. So for me, I added in fruit and I added fruit in. So fruit and honey on an animal-based eating can be added in for extra carbohydrates. And I was able to sustain just fine. So if you're that person, talk to me and you can still do a similar thing, but you can add fruit and honey in, and it's a little bit different with the eating style, okay? And then the last part is going to be the supplement bundle. So this right here is your 5-1-1 challenge. Again, after this, if this is you, we only have so many, so make sure you talk to the team if you're serious. If we need to buy more bundles, we'll get you more. But I would talk to the team tonight. If you want to sign up for this, make sure you get on the list, and then I'm going to be making a specific video to walk you guys through all the details of how to walk through this successfully. Again, me going through it, I'll tell you some of the stuff that I had challenges with, the stuff that I felt great with, just give you all the ins and outs on it. Sound good? You guys good? Yeah. Good. One more time. You guys good? Yay! Okay. So, and again, the gut protocol, I'm going to walk through that on the video. Last thing is this. Our next event we're going to do, summer, obviously people are vacationing a lot, so what we decided is in July 20th, it's a Thursday night, my lovely wife is going to host a Max Moms webinar. So there'll be a webinar you guys can log on to that's going to be all about pregnancy, postpartum, labor delivery. Like she's going to go into all the goods on how to have the most healthy natural birth process pre and post. Sound good? Hey, I love you guys. Body needs no help, just know. Oh my Lord. Oh my God. I'm going to pray for all of you. All right guys, I love you. Thank you so much.